Can I do that?
It's free. Nintendo.
That's why Brett Favre is Brett Favre.
Who is your daddy and what does he do?
Computer Man! What the rock is cooking.
Welcome to the 90s Entertainment Show, your podcast for 90s video games, movies, TV, sports, and much more. So here we are, episode 5, and we got a little treat for everyone today. With me, as always, I'm Nick Stevens. With me this week is my co-host, the female pop star.
Oh, no.
The dream lover. His name is Maryan Carey.
Oh, it's a reach now. I'm just going to have to come out with a name, I think, before it's all said and done. So,
See, Ryan, for those of you just listening and for our special guest on the line, Ryan doesn't want to give his last name, so I've told everyone I'm going to be giving him a new last name every week. So, but this week I incorporated a different gender.
I know. I appreciate that, by the way.
Yeah. And then also this week, we have a special guest. This guy is doing a documentary. It's an awesome thing. We're going to let him talk about it. But Rob, I forgot to pronounce your last name. Rob
McCallum.
McCallum. I keep wanting to say McCallum. Okay.
It's all right.
All right. So yeah, what we're going to do, we're going to we're just going to kind of let Rob take it over here. What he's doing an awesome documentary, and then it's about a guy going across America. He's going to try to collect 7+ Nintendo games. No internet, no buying on the internet. He's going to do it strictly through contacts with people and stores. So, Rob, do you want to kind of give a little overview, and we'll just kind of ask you questions as we go?
Yeah, sure. I think you hit the thrust of the documentary kind of head on. Essentially, I'm following my best friend Jay on a 30-day mission as he crisscrosses the country in search of all the NES retail games. So there's 700 plus games that he's got to acquire with his own funds, and he's doing it with no online purchases whatsoever. So it's kind of like the thrill of the hunt. Of course, you know that there are a good 50 or so NES games that are extremely hard to find. So I'm sure that's where the journey will focus on, trying to get those games. And when we do get those, that'll be kind of the bigger moments in terms of game hunting. But it's also a documentary on everything retro gaming, game collecting, and kind of like a state of the union, where games are now versus where they are then, and how come this culture of retro gaming is just growing and growing by the leaps and bounds, to the point that game developers are taking notice, and we're getting a lot of retro remakes getting the HD transition and treatment recently. So there's a lot to observe there on a cultural level, but we're using Jay's 30-day journey to kind of examine everything that's going on in the world of video games, and specifically Nintendo in the NES era.
That's awesome. So even like the real rare games, you guys
absolutely.
Okay, like the world.
So some of the stuff that isn't on the list, so to speak, would be like Nintendo World Championship.
Okay, that was my first question.
Let's call it. Yeah. We're basically going after all the retail NES games. So if it was on the store shelf that had the Nintendo seal of approval, that's what we're going after.
Okay.
So technically, the Tengen carts, the black carts, aren't on the list. But Jay, being a collector, if he sees something in a good condition, see, this is where he's going to have to balance, the quest before him and keep his collecting habits in check. I got to tell you, for the last 2 months, it's been really hard for him not to score a few games that he's found. I think the last purchase he made was Earthbound for SNES, in early May.
Oh, wow.
But he's had to pass up some other stuff and resist the urge to even go out there to see what's available, because, if you see something, you've got to score it.
Yeah, what did he get Earthbound for? I know that sets you back a couple $100.
I'm not sure what he got it for, to be honest. He put it to me, he goes, I know I have to save a budget to do this documentary, but this is Earthbound. So
wow, that's Super Nintendo game. So,
yeah.
And like you said, no internet access, so he's going to try to hit retro stores and yard sales and things like that.
Yeah, retro stores, the mom and pop shops, flea markets, game stores, kind of trying to do it old school. When you didn't have access to eBay and things were more than a click away, to really kind of value the purchases and stuff like that he's able to find. So there's almost a story with every game now that he's going to have, versus people that just acquire everything on eBay with a click away. It's like, oh, great, you got this new game, and what did you have to do to earn it? Well, just a few mouse clicks. Great. It's going to be a lot more valuable to him beyond the dollar amount. The fact that he had to go to like Houston to find this game on like a 12-day cross country trek with 5 filmmakers following him around with cameras in his face and documenting the whole deal. So
yeah, and that's true because I buy games off eBay and Amazon, but man, when I find one of those at a Goodwill or a flea market, yeah, you're right. That's very true.
Yeah, I always get the text about the Goodwill finds.
Yeah,
so how
see, those are the ones
is.
that stand out a little bit more. There's nothing wrong with buying online. We're not condemning that. We just think that there's something more to like kind of earning it. I mean, anybody with like a credit card and eBay account can essentially probably have like a complete NES collection, within a week or so if they wanted.
Yeah.
But, we're just trying to do it the old school way for the thrill of the hunt and bring back that, 80s, early 90s nostalgia that came with the NES and relive some of those memories.
Well, the first thing I thought was kind of like the Route 66 journey of video games almost, like just that rite of passage, just remembering the simpler time, like it's a cool idea.
Yeah, it's the 8-bit road trip we keep calling.
That's right.
8-bit road trip. I like that. Is that going to be like your tagline? You guys got a tagline already? 8-bit road trip?
Yeah, basically 8-bit road trip, other than
awesome.
the one man, 30 days, 700 plus games.
That's awesome. So 30 days, where are you guys starting from? Where's your starting point?
Well, Jay's based out of London, Ontario, Canada, which is about 2 hours southwest of Toronto.
Okay.
That's kind of like his starting spot, and I'm sure he'll do like the typical thing, hit up all his friends for as many games as they feel like they want to donate. Problem is, like myself, our other friends are kind of game collectors too, so I don't know how much... they'll probably be a little sympathetic towards him, but then he'll branch out to like the stores within our city, there, our home city, where I'm from as well, and then kind of go regional, and then of course make the trek into the forbidden zone of America.
Okay.
Head across the great land, so to speak.
Yeah. I know from the Ryan and I are from the Midwest, and we not Midwest. Where are we from? We're right in Ohio, West Virginia.
Ohio River Valley.
Yeah, I'm thinking, but we're from
Ohio, Midwest. I'm sure there's not.
Yeah, no, not at all. I got that wrong. But there's not a lot of those stores around here. So like when we find something, you're right. I love that point you made. When I find something at a yard sale or Goodwill, I mean, it just makes my day. So that's gonna be awesome to see him go through there and do that. So he's using his own money, like you said, for games, and his own gas money too.
No, he gets to hitch a ride with us.
Okay,
That's kind of where he gets out a little ahead. And of course, because we're housing crew and stuff like that, he'll find a square on the floor to curl up in and cuddle himself to sleep or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're kind of footing the bill for travel and stuff like that. But still, you've got to, when you think about 700 plus games, even if you were to say like the average game is like $10, that's $7,000 right there. And we all know that those like 50 hard to find rare games are going to be kind of above the $50 mark. Or at least above the $10 mark. So that's already pushing over $7,000, even with the games that are going to be $1 and $2 here and there.
Yeah. And are you given like any rules, like the game has to work, or?
Yeah, so that's kind of like the critical thing. Condition wise, there isn't too many rules, but we will have like an NES console with us in the van, so to speak, probably playing on the road as we trek down the highways to peel the minutes back, make it a little bit more durable. But we'll test basically all the games in the parking lot to make sure they work. And that way, when he returns home at the end of the day, he'll have a complete working collection.
Oh wow! So part 2 of this documentary might be beating 700 games. Right?
Well, this part of the thing we're probably going to do is seeing how many games we can actually play. Obviously, because the doc's only going to be about 90 minutes, there's going to be a ton of footage that isn't included. But if we can kind of get a little bit of attention to every game, be it box art or like a quick montage where he shows all the different games that he gets, that's the kind of thing that we're hoping to achieve. But beating 700 games would be quite the interesting spin-off, so to speak.
Be a lifelong journey there.
That would be a long time.
But, these documentaries, things like this fascinate me. I know Craigslist Joe on Netflix is just fantastic. Watching him go from place to place, just depending on trying to just do one goal, and that's kind of what this reminded me of. And as soon as I saw Rob posted this on our Facebook page, and as soon as I saw that video, I was just like, wow, that's awesome. And now you're also getting, I believe you just got Nintendo to agree to be a part of this.
Yeah, that's kind of like the big news of the week, so to speak. Nintendo has officially kind of signed on board. Now, the details are still working out as to what their involvement will be. We're hoping that it's an interview with somebody reputable within the company, but just to talk to them and maybe even get like a letter of support or something from them that acknowledges Jay's journey and get their reaction to that kind of thing is really cool, we think. It kind of puts a nice blanket of legitimacy across what we're trying to do, and that
sure.
the big end kind of looking down, giving the thumbs up. I'm basically two guys, best friends, trying to pay homage to the NES era.
Yeah, and they probably like that better because you're not just emulating; you're actually getting the real thing.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Now, the other people that we got on board this week too, the other kind of cool announcement is we got Hyperkin on board.
Oh wow!
Who's the maker of the Retron console?
Yeah, and I have one of those. Yeah.
Yeah, so with the Retron 5 coming out, they were pretty excited to be able to have this kind of opportunity to talk not only about that, but also just about their love for gaming. And the individual that I was talking with, he grew up in the NES, SNES, Mega Drive, Genesis era. So when he started working in the game industry about 15 years ago, those were the games that he fell in love with. So it'll be cool to talk with him about his memories and how he's able to translate that passion to working with a company like Hyperkin to get the Retron on the market.
Yeah,
So we're pretty excited to have them on board too.
I actually just showed Ryan the Retron 5. It's not out yet, I don't think, but that's the one that plays all the games.
Okay.
Like Super Nintendo. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a huge
Game Boy Advance,
Yeah.
Mega
Oh,
Drive,
wow.
Genesis.
and it's got the Bluetooth controllers now. I think.
Yeah, it has the two wireless Bluetooth controllers, I believe, but it also has the ports for the original controllers. That if you want to plug in and use your other ones. But I love the fact that it has an HDMI out on it. So
Exactly.
you can play all your games like on flat screen and have it look kind of appropriate.
Yeah, and I saw that too. Some of the screen resolution shots they were showing. That's really cool.
That'd be nice.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you guys are really getting some attention here, and that's really cool.
We're really fortunate, to be honest. I got to give a shout out to some people that help us do this. Chris Montiani, a friend of ours in London who works with a local paper there. It's like a small subsidiary of like the main kind of newspaper. Did an article for us, and he did an article for us on my feature film that I finished up in May and had the premiere of. And he did an article on the NES Club for us, and then it spiraled out of control from the paper that he works at to the larger, more popular mainstream paper in the city to national news coverage, where we're doing an interview on morning radio with CBC National News, and that's how Nintendo first heard about us. So that when we made contact with them, they had already heard this award-winning journalist interview me at 8 a.m. Talking about this documentary. So we're very fortunate with who's jumped on board to give us some airtime, including folks like yourselves in the podcasting world. It's a really big deal for us. I mean, it might not be a big deal for you. It's a huge deal for us as filmmakers and storytellers.
Well, it's funny because when I saw Nintendo and you mentioned Hyperkin, I mean, we just launched this podcast a few months ago. We maybe have 200-300 downloads.
Yeah.
So we really appreciate you taking the time and coming on here. That's awesome.
Not at all, man. Not at all, man.
That's awesome. Is there anything? I know you got your Kickstarter out there, and you want to give some details about that. Is that still on?
Kickstarter wrapped up
Okay.
on the 21st of June, and can say we successfully met our goal. We exceeded it. I think we finished with 16,800 or so. So
wow.
We were aiming for 15,000. So we got about 112%, which is really awesome. And the great thing about the Kickstarter stuff is there's only stuff that was going to be offered via Kickstarter, like a one-time only, like some of the special edition Blu-rays, the DVDs. Because when we sell this via distribution, they're only going to want kind of one cut of the film. They're not going to want to release, several editions because at the end of the day, this is still indie filmmaking, right?
Yeah.
So they're gonna want the streamlined, like 87-minute version, but we're hopefully proud to offer the 2-hour version for everybody that that chose those rewards and stuff like that. Really excited about that. The great thing about the Kickstarter, Kickstarter in general, and people have asked me tons of questions about crowdfunding. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. But we found it not as like the piece of the pie that was like all or nothing, because we knew that we'd have to count on funds elsewhere other than Kickstarter, and of course argue with everybody on the internet saying, are you raising money just to buy video games? And I wish I could hang out with my best friend for the summer and have people pay us $15,000 to do it, just play games and that kind of stuff. But it really let us know if the community embraced the project, and I got to tell you, 3/4 of the people that pledged to that were people that I didn't know whatsoever, complete strangers that reached out to us, pledged their cash money, and we had a lot of people, pledge the upper tiers that really blew us away. Like, to the point that we were like speechless that people were, wanting to become executive producers and associate producers because they believed that much in the film and what the film was trying to say, and comparing it to other great films like King of Kong, saying, we hope that this film does for, consoles what King of Kong did for arcade cabinets. This is a culturally important statement that you guys are making. And, these are people we don't even know. And now we're set up to go to some of these people's local game shops that they love, that they celebrate. And we're going to, kind of meet them on the road, so to speak, with our NES Club tour, if you will. And,
Yeah.
Like,
Awesome.
I was talking to some guys in Du Bois, PA, a couple championship gamers, actually, that reside there that got Guinness World Record scores on a few different carts. And,
Oh, wow.
it's not a huge town, but they're like, if you come here, you won't be sorry. We got this great local shop here. They'll, welcome you arms open. We'll try to get a crowd going and stuff. So it's really going to be interesting, as the bus rolls in, so to speak, what the environment's going to be like. But we're so excited for that kind of reception because we don't know what it's going to be like as we go out into the country. Some people will probably let us film there. Some people won't. We've debated this a lot amongst the production team. Are we going to call ahead to places? And the kind of general consensus is probably not, because it's so easy to say no and hang up the phone, right?
Yeah.
But when you got 4 to 5 starving filmmakers with big smiles on their face and the promise of selling a lot of games that day if we can just capture it on camera, we think a lot of people are going to be a little bit more convinced to kind of let us get away with it. So.
Wow.
We will see. But yeah, lots of great stuff going on, and it all stemmed from the kindness of strangers via Kickstarter, and it really let people, you hear the phrase all the time, vote with their dollars to see this film get made. So it was really nice. Good Kickstarter experience.
Yeah, and when you mentioned people curious if they're just giving money to help someone's game collection, you guys did a very good job of making that clear, because that was my first question. And I'll be honest, because when I read your summary, then I clicked your video. You guys did a good job with that, and you immediately talked about he'd be using his own funds to do that, the Kickstarters for production and things like that, and that's really cool. So you mentioned coming through some of the towns. I really wish Ryan and I had something to offer you if you came.
We got nothing.
We're very.
You're not even making a sales pitch. I love
Not
it.
at all. No. I live in a town called Point Pleasant. The Mothman film was filmed here, or not filmed here, but it's based on a story from our little town. That's the only thing I have going, and that has nothing to do with video games. But we do host the Mothman story here. So,
I like it.
But that's awesome. I'm sure it's just a humbling experience for you. Of course, you mentioned Nintendo and Hyperkin. That's just all these little stores that you're gonna be able to visit. So I'm sure that's a huge humbling experience for you.
It's pretty cool. I mean, part of me always thinks that okay, why wouldn't these companies want to send someone in PR department to do a 30-minute interview or something like that? So that feels like it's almost like, okay, as soon as we kind of make ourselves legitimate, it almost seems like a logical step for people to want to get a little press. And because it's an upbeat film, it's not like an expose where we pull back the covers and reveal what Nintendo is really like. We're celebrating everything we love. So it doesn't feel like it's that far of a stretch from a corporate kind of mentality. Like, yes, we want to give the thumbs up to these guys. Other than once they open the floodgates, they're going to probably be harassed by every indie filmmaker out there. So we got really lucky with Nintendo through some back channels that we had access to. But what really blows me away are the people that want to get on board with us too. Like Tommy Tallarico is on board. Like, to have a guy who is as busy as him doing video games live and who has done soundtracks for the last, 25 years, including Earthworm Jim, which I know you guys want to talk about later.
I didn't even put that together.
It's really, really awesome to have somebody like that on board. And then other gaming personalities like Patrick Scott Patterson, who's hosting a panel at Comic-Con and invited us along to go film it. So now we're going to Comic-Con on the 18th to see his panel on video games, where we've been, where we are, and where we're going, plus the personalities he's got there, just to be part of that and kind of open the film essentially at Comic-Con as this journey begins. And then guys like Greg Pabich, who, were responsible for Action 52, one of the notorious unlicensed carts, and most recently, the Cheetah Men Lost Levels, still creating an NES cart. To have a guy like that who developed NES games on board talking about the unlicensed side is really, really awesome. Plus, there's tons of other guys, championship gamers like Rudy Ferretti, who had 17 world record scores. We have Walter Day from Twin Galaxies who wants to be involved. Just lots of people, and then of course people from the podcast world. We've reached out to the Game Chasers, who are obviously a huge inspiration for what we're doing, who go hunting like on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
So those guys are cool. 8-Bit Eric and some other guys from the RetroWare TV scene, plus other podcasters who are just, like yourselves, reaching out to see if we're interested in doing interviews. What else can they do to help us out? It's really cool to have the whole literal NES Club kind of on board.
Yeah, and being a retro game collector like myself, I'm nowhere near 700 games, but this just, and I think, like you said, the culture's coming back around to the retro game collecting. I feel like this is the right time for this documentary, and I think it's going to be awesome. Will you guys ever, I don't know how all this stuff works, and maybe you guys looked into it, but like streaming services like Netflix and Hulu, will that be a possibility for your documentary?
Yeah, that's part of one of the routes of distribution that we're hoping to achieve. DVD and Blu-ray is still by far the most lucrative venue for anybody to make money back on their film. So that's obviously the big target as well. But because I believe that we're really headed for a digital era, it's all about iTunes, Netflix, Hulu. Yeah. The digital streaming areas and stuff like that. Plus, there's a ways that you can do that yourself a lot now. If you go search like VHX.TV online, you'll see a bunch of feature films and documentaries that have been released. Indie Game, the movie, is one of them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that was released via VHX first, and I believe they got distribution afterwards because of the numbers that they were doing on their own through self-distribution, which is great because all the money essentially goes back into the filmmakers other than some bandwidth fees, which is really great because then you're not paying like a middleman as a distributor to kind of get your flick out around the world, which is sometimes a necessary evil, but when we're talking like literally just thousands of dollars to make a film instead of like hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands, it really helps when it comes right back to the filmmaker.
That's awesome. So have you actually had experience in filmmaking? Or is this
I've been making films for the last about 13 years. I did the traditional school route, if you will. I got a Bachelor Honors in Film Theory, and then I did 2 years master's degrees in film production as well. And then basically been making films, be it short form, documentary style, and narrative form for the last, like I said, 12 years or so. Had a feature film that just made its kind of cast and crew and investor, so to speak, premiere at the beginning of May called Unearthly, which is a bit of a sci-fi adventure in the vein of Indiana Jones and Jurassic Park, where dad has to go in search of his daughter after she disappears, and he discovers that she's on this crazy treasure hunt quest and this zone full of these nightmarish creatures and bizarre things, kind of like an ode to the B Atomic Age monster movies with a little bit of like an Indiana Jones Jurassic Park vibe thrown in.
That's cool.
Oh,
yeah,
that's
awesome. We just got done talking about Jurassic Park in our last episode. So that
awesome!
well.
Yeah, so we're in the distribution hunt for that right now, and that was a campaign that I ran on Indiegogo about 2 years ago to help get funds for that, and now that's done, and here we are now doing this one.
Yeah. Is there just for the listeners, is there a place someone can go to see what all you do? Just Google you, or?
I try not to tell anybody to Google me. My wife gets jealous. No, I'm just kidding. They can go onto IMDb and search Robert McCallum, McCallum, or they can go to my website, pyreproductions.net, Pyre productions.net. There's usually a little bit of information there on us or on myself and the kind of stuff that I do with the people that I work with, be it film and screenwriting. And we actually have a podcast network that we do as well, where it's essentially one subscription and you get like 5 or 6 different shows that are released fairly frequently, usually a week. So it's kind of like the Netflix of podcasts.
Oh, that's cool.
So you get like a movie show, a video game show, some video ones and stuff like that as well.
Well, that's awesome. So
Yeah,
so I mean, it's Rob's going to stay on with us and chat with us about it. Now that we know his film history, when we start talking about our film, we might be put to shame a little bit.
No, I wouldn't. That's guys.
So, is there anything else you want to add? Of course, we want to let the listeners know where we can find the NES Club and more information about it. If you don't care to.
Yeah, the big thing if you want to follow along with the NES Club is go on Facebook and search for our page. It should just be, facebook.com/the NES Club. There is a website, it's nesclubmovie.com, which is basically like just a splash page that has a synopsis of what we're trying to do, plus links to our Twitter and Facebook account, and of course our Kickstarter page as well. But it's really the Facebook platform that you're going to see the most updates. We have, I think, about 450 to 500 people that are following us on Facebook now. But when we go on this journey, we hope to post pictures like every day of like not like every game that he finds and stuff like that, but some of the highlights of the trip, so to speak. So it'll kind of create like a scrapbook feel. And a lot of people want to know if we're going to let people know if he did it or not. And that's the answer to that is simply kind of no. We've got to wait for the film to come out. Otherwise, it kind of gives away the ending, even though it's only a small part. And we're always saying, it's about the journey, not the destination, the thrill of the hunt. We're kind of trying to keep that under wraps. So even when we go to the Portland Retro Gaming Expo in October, where we have our own panel now, I'm sure people are going to be asking us about that, but we'll be, like I said, in Portland talking about the film for an hour there. Probably some highlights posted on Facebook and Twitter of that, and we hope to show a teaser of the film for sure at some point.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, even if he does fail, that's going to be an awesome documentary. But yeah, you're completely right though. That's keep it under wraps. I'm sure that's the best way to go. But I mean, to
be honest, I'd rather watch him come so close and fail than watch him get it all nice and neat and tidy.
Right. Yeah.
We have come under such criticism. Like, the first criticism was, you guys are raising money for games. The second criticism was, how do we know that you won't plant games since Jay's already a collector? How do we know that you're not going to take stuff from his collection? It's like, you're just going to have to take it on faith. I know you don't know me personally, but I'm not interested in spending a lot of money on a fake documentary. Jay by no means is an actor. You would see through any kind of false setup that we could possibly, dream up. And this is, again, where it comes back to, it's about the thrill of the hunt. I'm sure he'll get close to getting all the games, and it's really going to be more a matter of time management and money management more than not being able to find the games, because he's got 30 days to do it and with a limited budget, and he's only got so long at each store, so it's not like he can sit on the fence for an hour deciding whether he should spend $4 extra on Mario 2 because it's a little overpriced. He's either got to pass it up and hope that he finds it at the next store, or just take the plunge and buy it there and kind of go on. So, but yeah, just really looking forward to it. Appreciate the time that you guys have given me to talk about it, and hopefully we can attract a few new fans to follow us along and get some people excited about the online digital premiere when that happens, and get the support going.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, we're probably not the biggest channel you can go through, but
that's all right. I'll start somewhere.
We definitely have a couple hundred people who do listen to us. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for that. And I'm real excited about this. When I saw you post on Retro Junkies first, and we're connected with those guys. We're kind of in a network with those Rob and Landon from Retro Junkies, and I saw you come over to our page, and as soon as I saw your post, I wanted to share it, and that we just kind of commented back and forth, and then I think you actually volunteered to interview, which I was just I kind of was I didn't expect that. I really appreciate that. I was like, this guy wants to come on this hack podcast with us. so and you're our first interview. You're the first guy that ever joined our podcast. It's just the two of us, so we're real honored and just want to thank you for that. And we wish that documentary the best of luck. I know I've been telling all my buddies about it, and we're gonna keep hopefully we can. I'm gonna keep track of y'all's Facebook when you really start doing things, and we'll just start promoting you there too. So
yeah, that'd be awesome. And really let's do a follow up or something like that, like after the journey, or if we even have time on the road, maybe kind of in media res, so to speak, during the moment. We're kind of up for whatever. We do not want to turn down free press or reaching out to the community and stuff like that by any means. I mean, clearly it's like I said, 5 a.m. here on the West Coast in Las Vegas. I have no problem kind of making the sacrifices, because as a filmmaker, I gotta say I'm pretty fortunate to have the ability to make movies and stuff like this. So I really kind of drink it up when I get these opportunities. So don't sell yourself short, guys.
Oh, thanks. Awesome. Then we were complaining because it's 8 a.m.
I was gonna say, I was upset about that, but that's all right.
Yeah, no, now we have no reason to complain. Okay.
All right, so what's next? We talking? We got a couple other topics, right, guys?
Yeah, we're going to do, because you're on the interview, we usually do 3 topics, but we thought it'd be good if we just shortened it to 2. First, the game we picked, and this is 1994. and for listeners who don't know, our podcast goes year to year. We started in 1990. When we get to 1999, we would just reset back to 1990. And we usually pick a video game, a movie, and then our last topic kind of changes. We do TV shows sometimes. We done one sport. We were going to do a sport this time. I kind of led Ryan on. He's a big basketball fan, and we were talking.
I was crushed.
And '94 was a cool year for basketball because Jordan quit, and it was the battle of the big men. But we'll come back around to that, Ryan. I'm sorry.
So, question for you guys then, because this is something that's going in the documentary, and as I work out my script and stuff like that. 99, is that just an arbitrary number that you kind of limit yourself to the retro era, like anything before 99? Like, is it like, do you figure like a 15, 20-year span? A lot of people debate this.
Yeah, and then I don't have any formula or anything for this, but I feel like anything 2 generations or below is kind of retro.
Yeah,
like
that's what I was trying to think too. Like 2 or 3 console generations removed is essentially retro.
Yeah, because people laugh at me because they'll ask me, "What's your favorite retro system?" And I always say the Dreamcast, and they're like, "That is not retro. That's too new."
See, and this is where the argument comes in that I've had with people. Like, Dreamcast isn't retro; it's too new. It's only 14 years old, 13, less than 13 because it came out in September. So.
Yeah, wow, if the Dreamcast isn't retro, then that opens a whole can of worms, I think.
Yeah, so it's a fine line. I would consider the Dreamcast retro, just as a side note, only because again we're talking almost the 15-year mark. It's Sega's last console, and it really kind of fizzled out before the GameCube really kind of took off in that era. So. I would concur with you guys. I would say at least 15 years. 99 is kind of like the limit that we're approaching in the documentary when we talk about what's retro and what isn't.
Yeah, and it really wasn't a lot of thought into that. I had been thinking a lot of just podcasts for a long time. I've always wanted to start one, and then I had to have a good pitch to get Ryan to join me. He was kind of reluctant, but I thought
he's the reluctant bad guy.
I am.
Get it. I don't want to waste my time talking about movies at 8 a.m.
So that's right.
Well, now that we've interviewed a famous guy,
I'm all in now. I'm all in.
So that's awesome. So yeah, we're going to do 94 today. And the first topic for video games, Earthworm Jim, and which is awesome that you already tied that in. But this game in my childhood, I know Ryan doesn't have a lot of memories about it because Ryan confessed he's really into sports games, and
well, I said with Nick we have about a 5-year difference in age, and I said so some of the things that he picks, first it's like there's just a little bit of a difference there, as far as what he was playing and I was playing at the time. And so sometimes he picks a game, and I'm like, okay.
And this is one of those times.
Exactly.
But Earthworm Jim, and I was talking to Ryan before the podcast. There was a little video game store down the road from where I lived, and every Friday you could go in and rent 3 games for $5. And around this time, I always got Earthworm Jim because I had a blast with it, but I never could beat it. That thing was real hard for me as a kid. But they kind of go into the story of Earthworm. What's that?
What platform did you play it on?
SNES.
Okay, so that came out actually in '95 on the Super Nintendo.
Yeah. So and it was 94 in the Genesis, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So I didn't have it, and I mentioned this in another podcast. I didn't have a Genesis till the PlayStation came out. I bought one off some kid who was trying to get money for a PlayStation. So, but I remember playing this, and I love the quirkiness of it, and kind of go into the story of Earthworm Jim, and I recently got the HD version. You were talking about HD remakes too. There's this neat little comic strip that happens, and it showed an earthworm. It was like just a normal earthworm, and then the suit comes down, transforming into the Earthworm Jim, and it's just this hilarious storyline about this, the evil guy Psychro, and they gotta save Princess What's Her Name, which I love that, because a lot of I love how they make fun of. Yeah, they make fun of that because you think of all these games and movies, you can't really remember the princess's name sometimes. So Princess What's Her Name? That was just the perfect name for a princess. So the story's hilarious. There's even the levels are hilarious. They come up with these names. I know the first level is New Junk City. Then they had What the Heck, which was a spoof off of of like a hell setting. And I think even one level they just called it I think it was level 4 or something like that. Which just I thought, well, maybe they just got lazy, didn't know what to call it. But
yeah, they're self-parroting themselves at that point.
Yeah, which I just thought was great. But gameplay-wise, Ryan, you did get a chance to play this, right?
I did play it some, yeah. I downloaded the HD version. And so, I mean, it's a good game that holds up, I think, as far as my son loved it, wants to play it all the time. He wants me to buy anything I can get my hands on with it now, which is always the bad part of the retro games. A lot of times, seems like my son, he's 7, is more into those a lot of times than he is some of the newer games.
So yeah, and then with Ryan and I, and Rob, I don't know if you have kids, but with Ryan and I, we always judge how it holds up when we let our kids play it. And it's so true, because I've let my son play some old games, and he's just immediately bored, and that's when I know it doesn't hold up. But like
That's a great barometer. I like that. I don't have kids, but I really like that approach. That's of all the people I've talked to and the research I've done about who have podcasts and YouTube channels, I think that's probably the coolest one that I've heard of.
well, cool, because I think Ryan, your son's 7,
He's 7,
and my oldest son's almost 4, and so my son literally just he dove into this game. I mean, he can hardly get by, first few parts of the level, and I got to help him. But especially when it comes to whipping your earthworm body onto the little hooks.
Yeah.
But he laughed every time you'd beat a stage, and that's one of my favorite parts of the game is when that screen comes up and groovy, 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 groovy. And we'd sit there and hit that button as fast as we could, and he just giggled and laughed. So I knew then the game was funny for him. Of course, I'm a huge dork, so like this kind of comedy holds up in my eyes. But to me it held up, and especially when my son Isaac can just dive into this game and play it. And
couple questions for you guys. Did you ever play the sequel?
I did a little bit, not as much as the first one. I don't think Ryan has.
I did not. No, sorry.
Yeah. Apparently the sequel is actually supposed to be a bit of a better game, but because it was later on in a life cycle, a lot of people passed up on it, and they had really ported Earthworm Jim around a lot at that point. Even the SNES version actually didn't have a level. Some of the levels that the Genesis version had, especially like Intestinal Distress, was one of the levels that was completely left off. And there was no. The soundtrack was completely different on the SNES as well. There was a special edition of the game too that was released on Sega CD and Windows 95 that had an entirely new level as well. Called the Big Broody, and there was this weird, cool release via the Sega channel that had this contest. It was like the Earthworm Jim race or something like that, and they had players find this secret room, and it would display this password and this number that you called, you get like an Earthworm Jim prize or something like that. It was limited to like 250 players or like first 250 players that found it upon release. So I'm sure it was a bit of a scramble,
right?
But the whole franchise really went downhill after the SNES and Genesis versions because it was ported to Game Boy, which of course had no colors and not nearly as many buttons. And then Game Gear as well, which wasn't nearly as good, and Game Boy Advance. And it wasn't really until the digital re-releases that you guys are talking about, first on the Wii Virtual Console and the Genesis section, and then like the HD remake on Xbox Live and PlayStation, I think around 2010 or 2011, that people really kind of got it back to it. But it's still, even the HD remakes didn't have the special edition Sega CD levels or this contest level in there and stuff like that. So if you really want the full experience, you're going to have to find a Sega CD version to get all the great Earthworm Jim unlockable stuff out there.
Yeah. Good thing Ryan has a Sega CD.
I actually own a Sega CD, sadly to say. So,
hey man, there's nothing wrong with Sega CD. Sega was trying to do whatever they could at the time between
they tried
the Genesis 2, the Sega CD, the 32X. They
were trying real hard.
Yeah,
you gotta give them points for swinging at the ball.
Yeah, and that's awesome history. I read a little bit about that. I noticed the Sega CD version had a different composer. So that's great background. I didn't know all that. So,
there you go.
Yeah, and what was the? I think it was a Nintendo 64 version. That was all right.
Yeah, it was like Earthworm Jim 64 or something like that, and then there was like an enhanced remake on PlayStation Portable as well.
Okay, that's cool. But yeah, I actually had the HD version. I don't know if you noticed this, Ryan, but like when I was running up to some platforms, it got almost like stuck in the air. Like when I was playing the Sega version when I was reviewing this again for the show, but I felt like some of the mechanics weren't as good in the totally HD version. Looked 10 times better, of course, or not. I don't want to say 10 times better, but it was more clear and crisp. But it just, I don't know, something about the way the mechanics were happening just didn't. But when I went back and played the Sega version, I was still real impressed with the animations. I always, when I test animations, like I would jump in the air and just start hitting pause real fast. I don't have one of those turbo controllers, and and you can see, like even when he lands, like you hit, his head's kind of still squishing down and everything. So the animations were fantastic in this game for the time. And I know that when I was reading up on it again, that was kind of the allure of it. Everyone talked about how fluent and just how nice the environments were, and of course the goofy as can be. So,
well, this is also a game that was so popular that it had its own TV show.
Exactly.
For like 2 seasons as well, right?
Exactly. So, and I didn't get to watch it. I was going to watch some, and I didn't get a chance to. And
You're all right. You're not missing out.
Yeah. I remembered it as a kid, but.
But this is like in the heyday of the mascots. You remember they had like Earthworm Jim, and of course was competing with Mario and Sonic. But then you had guys like Bubsy and Vector Man, and
I forgot about Bubsy.
There was just a glut of like characters that they were trying to thrust the big franchise tag on, and it was just like some of it wasn't good. I remember there was like a Cool Spot game, which is like the 7-Up
guy, yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean. I think there was even like a Noid game from Domino's.
Yep.
Too. So.
Oh wow.
Which one of those? I don't know if it was the Noid or the Spot. Actually, was a good game, and I remember playing one of them, and they were actually kind of good.
You can edit that part out later, right?
Yeah, I can.
I'm just kidding.
You just all of a sudden hear a dial tone. He hangs up. Don't want any affiliation with you ever again.
That's why I had to stipulate earlier, that we disagree on games quite a bit, Nick and I. So because of those comments when he says. So.
Yeah, and
that's all good. Just kidding.
In the last episode, we talked about Power Rangers, and I love Power Rangers as a kid, and Ryan was just over here shaking his head the whole time.
I think it was just the difference of 4 or 5 years there. Of course, I put down that I was about 13 when Earthworm Jim came out, so I was awkward and imbalanced hormonally and emotionally as a teenager right there anyway, so who knows what I liked. I pretty much hated everything probably when I was 13, and so that was my disclaimer for not playing Earthworm Jim.
Yeah, I was not a Power Ranger fan by any means. That's kind of like the end of my childhood when I saw these guys doing these weird gymnastic ninja moves and these rubber suits. I was more like the last kind of cartoon stuff that I watched was probably like the Disney kind of block with the Darkwing Duck, the Gummy Bears, the DuckTales stuff. But I'm mainly a huge like He-Man and the Masters of the Universe fan, Transformers, G.I. Joe. So I can share the non-love for Power Rangers.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Its huge following.
I enjoy the support. I don't always get that on here, so that's good. So.
Yeah, well there you go. Down with the Power Rangers. I don't care if there's a green, black, blue, or pink Ranger. It's a Voltron ripoff in my mind.
Yeah, I heard that too.
So whatever, man. Whatever.
Power Rangers. All right, we got off track a little bit there with Power Rangers.
Sorry about that.
No, you're fine. I was hoping you'd like them, but now Ryan, I think you just made Ryan's day.
I'm feeling good.
I think they're great. Talk about amazing set design and costume and graphic. Wow.
A little hint of sarcasm there.
No, not at all.
Okay, so back to Earthworm Jim. The controls. I always go through a bubble list or bullet list, Rob. So we hit memories, stories, and talk about controls. Like to me, even the HD version, other than the platforming I was talking about, sometimes would not lag, but would just kind of little hiccups for me. But platforming was real satisfying in Earthworm Jim. I loved whipping the worm part of your body on the hooks, and then I don't know what it is about games, but I love games that when you get a platform and you can actually see yourself pulling yourself up,
right?
Like games like Prince of Persia and things like that, and even playing Uncharted now, and that's just something satisfying about that, and instead of just landing on the platform. So it's like you feel like you're not going to make it at the last point. He grabs on and pulls himself up. So that was satisfying. And what did you think about the platforming, Ryan?
It was fine. I always sometimes, sadly enough, in my gaming world, when you have all the different heights of those platform games, sometimes I feel like I'm wandering around in the wrong section before I have to climb up 3 levels to get where I'm supposed to be. But it's great. And like you said, jumping from place to place, whipping your worm body obviously is great. And adds that other element of just shooting or just climbing. And so that was really an awesome feature there, I thought.
Yeah, and the gunplay, you're kind of just shooting. You don't actually see where your gun the the bullets or whatever that is, the laser, except for when you get the plasma part of it. But that was actually when I remember first playing that and thinking this is gonna be tough, but it's actually you're just going in the direction, and I really don't know what the range was, but it seemed like it stretched pretty far because I remember getting shooting up through the platforms into those crazy dogs. Those things just drove me nuts in the first level, but that was real satisfying. I like the variety, the whipping, the shooting, and the bosses were real diverse. The guy spewing fishes like you can't plural fishes, but spewing fish out, and you'd have to whip the box or shoot the box onto the to the spring to hit him in the butt and stuff like that. So it was always real kooky, and even the platform sometimes got crazy when you were. I don't know if you got to the part where you're riding the gym up and what the heck. And I'd always try to jump to a platform too early, then I had to start over, and it was just had to do all that again. And of course, I was playing it in a platform that had save states, so I was cheating a little bit. I have a little PSP that'll just let you reload it with one click of a button. So I was really cheating as I went through, just for the sake to experience the game for the podcast. Because I just, like I said, I remember how hard that game was when I was a kid. So.
Did you ever beat the game?
No, I didn't. I got real close, and I just went ahead and watched the ending on YouTube.
So you've seen the cow crush the princess?
Yes. Yeah. So, and I knew that had happened because I had a friend in grade school who did beat it, and this kid was just like the master of video games, so he told me all about it before it ever happened, but I never got to see it till we just reviewed this part. So.
Very cool.
Yeah, I think I made it to the 5th level. It was real funny because my son always wanted to play the Andy Asteroids level where you would, you saw me do that, Ryan, where you'd get on that rocket and go through, and of course he'd always lose, and I'd have to go and fight Psychro after that. On the HD remake anyways. So, did you get very far into it, Ryan?
I didn't. I'm sorry. I still didn't. I don't know. Maybe my 13-year-old adolescence is still in me, but I just didn't get to play very much of it. I'm sure that my time will be spent playing it now that my son thinks it's awesome. So I'm sure I'll have some hours ahead of me now. So
yeah, okay. And to go on to music, and that's awesome. So Rob, you're going to be interviewing the guy that did this game, right?
He was the actual one that did the composing for the Sega CD version, which is actually the better of the soundtrack. And I believe Mark Miller did the original one, who's done tons of different soundtracks as well. But Tommy Tallarico, who did the Sega CD Special Edition version, he's on board with the NES Club. So as soon as our schedules can line up, he's a busy guy that travels the world doing video games live, which is the Symphony experience with some visual aids. He will be talking about it, and maybe I'll even mention this podcast where we talk about Earthworm Jim.
Yeah, do that. That'd be awesome.
Do that. Get a soundbite for us too.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll send you business cards I haven't made yet. That's awesome. So my favorite track was definitely "What the Heck" because I loved how it did the. I don't even know the name of the song, but there's it kind of just a little bit of a creepy music, and then you just hear a record, and it just starts playing some like kind of upbeat stuff, and I love that setting, which I always thought was funny. You would think that would be like the last level in the game, would be like a hell-driven level, but it was like, oh, here it is, the second level. This is gonna be really hard. And then of course you got the little evil cat at the end. That was actually one of the easier bosses I thought at the end of that level, but I love the music in the game, and all the one-liners kind of remind me of with the groovy and the whoa Nelly and all that stuff. Just the actual sound and all that stuff of the game was good. Anything you saw, Ryan, that you heard?
Well, not so much of the sound. We've discussed that before. You're obviously the music guy that picks up on more of that. But I enjoyed, like you said, the one-liner. I always enjoy games that kind of embrace their. I don't really want to use the word silliness, but that sort of mentality, like they get their audience, they get what they're supposed to be doing, and they just kind of embrace it. They don't try to, and it just made it. I think it makes it more enjoyable. And I, as an adult, I'm watching it, and he's like those things. I laugh at what he says, and I think that's always good when they just go ahead and embrace what it is, and I think that makes it a much more enjoyable experience.
Yeah. I'm probably definitely not the music guy on this one, since Rob definitely knew the composers.
No, it's all right. I'm just here along for the ride. Don't worry about it.
No, we're always teasing about that kind of stuff. But the music, I always, especially when I can pop it in and remember it from when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I feel today with the big scores and soundtracks and games, I don't have a it's hard to remember. Like, I love the games Mass Effect, and I can hardly remember anything but the opening little, and it's not even really music at the beginning of it. It's just kind of like a low sound in the background. But that's why part of my love for retro games is just hearing that music. And I've mentioned many times, Mega Man 2, best soundtrack, in my opinion. I love it. I can actually play 2 or 3 of those songs on my guitar. I mean, it's just that soundtrack to me is just it kind of shaped just, I don't know, music for me, because it was so diverse for such a small sound, and I don't know, it was just cool. But yeah, music for me is always key for these retro games.
Yeah, but music's evolved too. I mean, as games move towards that cinematic look and feel to try to recreate that movie atmosphere, the music has taken on a more cinematic role, where it's got to be more of an illusion to kind of blend in the background so you don't notice it while you're playing, versus more of these retro games. A lot of the music is more theme driven. So like, here's the, New Junk City theme, or here's the Earthworm Jim theme. So they have limited tracks that are designed to kind of stand out on purpose, versus games nowadays that are, supposed to be more cinematic and blend in. Even though they're bigger in complexity, they're designed to be, lower impact, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, and my love for retro games just kind of stems from that, because I can see a level,
totally.
and I can hear the music in my head. So I mean, that's
well, hopefully you'll like our digital soundtrack that we do for the NES Club, where we have our own original 8-bit music. So.
Oh, that's cool. I would love to have a studio. I'd love to have a studio where I could create my own 8-bit music. Okay. So yeah, to wrap Earthworm Jim up, the storyline, like I said, he's, the suit comes down, takes him over. He's got to save Princess what's her name, and like Rob mentioned, I went out on YouTube and watched the ending, where there's the princess, and there comes a cow and just lands on her, and that's just the perfect ending to that kooky game. And I was kind of wondering, I didn't wonder, I already knew, but I would love to go back and not know what the ending was, and just think what world is going to happen. What's going to happen here? Is he going to kiss her? Is he going to lose a suit and she's going to kick him aside because he's just a worm? But no, a cow falls on her. It's like the last thing you could ever think of. So.
Well, it's because you launch a cow at the end of the first level.
Yeah.
So it finally comes back to kill her.
Is that supposed to be the same cow though? I wonder.
That's supposed to be the tie-in, yeah.
Oh,
that the
awesome.
very first kind of thing you do is the thing that kind of makes your journey worthless in the end.
And I know that's like the first trophy you get in the PlayStation version of it, because like as soon as you hit that refrigerator and it pops like cow trophy, I'm like, sweet, this is gonna be easy trophies.
Yeah,
not quite. I'm a big trophy collector. I know me and Ryan compete on that, but yeah, I mean that's kind of wraps up my thoughts on Earthworm Jim. And what we do now, we just kind of read. We post this on Facebook, and we read listener responses. And
sure.
A fellow by the name of Mike Cervantes says, "Old man, where to begin? Earthworm Jim was my favorite SNES platformer. I used to love watching the Saturday morning cartoon. I joined a forum for the first time and wrote my first fan fiction, and later my first self-insertion based around it. I used to bug Doug Tennepo online, and I learned about his whole body of work through him personally, which helped me get into the comic book writing. So this guy's serious. That's awesome. I've dabbled in wanting to do fan fiction, but never did. That's one of those things I wouldn't tell people about if I did. But that's really cool. Even this podcast, we have some local friends that were like, yeah, we do a podcast.
You're apologetic when we say it. We're like, I'm sorry.
But it's embraced more, and it's really, because we have a friend that listens to it, and he's big shout out to Scott Goldsberry. Yeah. He comments on everything now, and I just, for some reason, I thought he'd be one that would poke fun at us. But he's definitely a guy that likes it. So Francisco Reyes, he says, man, I remember saving my Christmas money and buying my Super Nintendo that came with Super Mario World and Super Mario Kart, and then I purchased Earthworm Jim as well. And boy, I gotta tell you, that sub-bubble level was a nightmare. Always cracked the darn thing. Man, what a classic. Yeah, that level was, it was funny because my son loved getting on the, is it a hamster on that level that you ride on? I kept calling it a guinea pig, but I think that's a hamster. Do you know, Rob?
I have no idea, to be honest.
Okay. Well, anyways,
it's some sort of small creature.
Yeah, some fur ball, but he loved doing that because all you had to do was hit the shoot button, and it would devour all these little things. But as soon as he got, you had to get in that little bubble, that little like a little water ship, and you had to. It was some weird controls because you had to. It was almost like tank controls in the old Resident Evil, where you'd have to hit the arrow keys, and then you would press a button to go where you were going. And he had an awful time at that. So I literally would be in another room, like cleaning or something. He'd come screaming, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy, help, 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 help!" And of course, he's already running out of air. Yeah. So, but yeah, I sympathize with Francisco there. Let's see. John Wedgeworth says he remembers the delighted bafflement of launching cows and elevator music and you know where. I guess you can. I mean, it's called heck. I don't really think it's a bad thing to say. So that's cool. And then Adam Kempetty about the HD version, how he really likes the HD version. So yeah, I mean that hit on some stuff we talked about. The HD version, I'm gonna keep playing because we got.
Right.
Of course, it saves it for you. You know, it kind of holds your hand like new games do, and it actually the HD version. It actually had a energy bar and hints, and a lot of the games now they hold your hand, and I'll just be flat out honest with that. They're much easier now than they were then, but I'll still play it because it looked cool and brought back a lot of cool memories, and I can play it on my big screen. So, but cool. Any final thoughts, Ryan?
I don't think so. I'm all out.
And you, Rob, you good to move on?
Yeah, I think so. I think the only kind of thing that I like about Earthworm Jim is it paved the way for other games like Conker's Bad Fur Day when it comes to platforming parody games, which is always nice. And, you talk about the HD release of this. We're getting another HD release of the same era. You mentioned your PlayStation 1. We're getting Abe's Odyssey released in HD soon for the next gen, which is cool. And I always put kind of Abe and Earthworm Jim kind of in the same category since they're both kind of odd-looking protagonists. So really excited that you guys actually talked about this. So hopefully this will get like... I don't know, some sort of refreshed rebranding above and beyond the HD release. Maybe they'll, combine both games into one card or something like that.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, get some publicity on this and get a new, new saga of Earthworm Jim.
There you go.
There you go. All because of your podcast. I like it.
That would be awesome. I keep telling Ryan, we're gonna get famous one of these days. Don't have to work anymore. Yeah, right. But so go on to the next topic, Forrest Gump. I'm gonna let Ryan kind of take this over.
With the movie maker on the set here, you're gonna have.
I'm gonna let you.
I'm just the color commentator usually, and now you're gonna have me throw in here.
No pressure. Go ahead, talk.
Yeah, I don't want to be embarrassed. I'm gonna let Ryan.
I see how you moved that. Mostly, what I love about Forrest Gump was just I feel like they should make a movie like this about for every person's generation, like because I can just imagine like this is obviously Forrest lived in eras but a little bit before my time, but like if somebody could make a movie of a character that was born in the early 80s through later on here, it would be awesome just to chronicle kind of all the major events of that person's life through the major events in society. I thought that was just the best thing about that and how cool that was, and I'm sure for people who really, I didn't grow up in a lot of these eras, but how it just kind of reminded them of basically how society, and the U.S. basically evolved, with all the major events there. I just thought that was, fantastic. And they did it in such a light, and it just, way. It's just a phenomenal movie that just holds up, I think, pretty well today, going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, the history, I always try to take some notes when I watch this, and like, the little pieces of history he's involved in. Of course, the first with Elvis, in his mom's in his mom's house, he apparently taught Elvis how to dance, which is hilarious. And what happened with President Nixon, where he called from the
right.
And of course the poop happens. I'm gonna edit myself there. The bumper sticker. Then I wrote of course the yellow smiley T-shirt. So,
yeah,
absolutely. So, did you kind of? I wrote down like a little timeline of what happened in the movie. You want to go, Ryan? You want to go through like major events? I started out with he was a child, with his legs,
right.
Mama gave me magic shoes. Whatever the mama said, my shoes would take me anywhere. I was quoting that movie. I probably hadn't watched that movie in seven years or so, and I was quoting it like crazy. So.
Well, that's what I remember. Growing up, like we used to quote it all the time. Like we didn't really know. Of course, stupid is as stupid does, and life is like a box of chocolates. All those things that you think back, you're like that doesn't even make sense, and we're quoting them in high school. And all those things.
Yeah.
As far as that goes. Of course, I love the football. Here's this guy who, was getting chased by bullies, and then all of a sudden, they're just like, run. Of course, that's one we quoted all the time. We'd run, Forrest, run, and then he, makes it to Alabama and plays football there.
Yeah, and then from there, he, when he graduates college, he goes into the Army, and it was just it was a neat kind of sequence of events, because to me, the movie was really about just, how special he was and how loving he was, and kind of helping Jenny come out of what she was coming through. But like at every point, there was a major point in his life, and he was always thinking about Jenny. But he went to the army, he met Bubba, which it's so weird because watching this as a kid, it was so emotional, and I'll be honest, I cried a little bit.
So you cried as a kid, or you cried now?
Now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, now. It was rough when Bubba died, and his mom. I mean, because Forrest was just so pure-hearted, and I just see it just innocent, and of course some of the scenes with Jenny when things would happen. He was just so innocent, and I'm going to tell you guys, you wouldn't believe me if I told you, but I could run like the wind. That was one of my favorite quotes in the movie when he was telling that lady about which watching it again, he was talking to an African American lady in the beginning of the movie, and I couldn't put two to two together when I was 94, but he was talking about how he got his name, and he
was talking about the
Ku Klux Klan. I just thought, oh my gosh, they did that in a movie. I don't know if they could even get away with that today, but that little things like that I didn't even catch. Of course, where Forrest is just so innocent and pure-hearted.
Right.
So, but so he went to the army. Of course, went to Vietnam. Met Lieutenant Dan, which was a huge part of the movie. And what did you think of Lieutenant Dan's character, Ryan?
Oh, well, I mean, it's definitely one of the, top 2 or 3 characters in there, and he just keeps coming back, as far as that goes. And, and just kind of his circle of disgust, missing out on his destiny of dying in the battlefield like the rest of his family, I guess. And, and I'm sure it was, kind of a somewhat realistic view of what a lot of soldiers felt when they come back if they were injured or amputees, and so he was definitely an interesting character. I think that played off of Forrest's innocence. Like obviously, I don't think he was the innocent character throughout the movie.
Yeah, and it's neat how Forrest comes in these people's lives and just kind of he just with his pure heart, and he just kind of he almost changes their lives, and that's so cool. To take a simple or someone that has a special need or whatever you want to call it, and they can just that to me that was the main message of the film is don't underestimate people, don't think you're too stupid to make a difference, and that to me is just like I said, it was an emotional movie. I did cry a little bit. My wife was kind of laughing at me. So, I mean, what do you think? I mean, have you watched this in a while, Rob? Has it been something you've seen lately?
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely one of those films that I know fairly well, mainly because Robert Zemeckis, of course, is the director of Back to the Future and Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and this is like one of his last live action films before he did all that motion capture stuff with like Beowulf and Polar Express and a few of those, and the most recent, I think, A Christmas Carol with Jim Carrey and stuff like that, where it's all that pseudo CG motion capture stuff. I think it's really interesting to hear you guys talk about Forrest Gump from like a guy that's kind of like fly on the wall, only because it's like you guys are doing like a retro podcast, and here you guys love this movie that is like completely based on nostalgia. Where this guy goes through all these little moments in history and kind of relives them and kind of presents them all as one kind of neat, tidy package. It's also by the same writer as the guy who did Benjamin Button, so you can see the parallel between those two storylines. I really like Forrest Gump. To me, it feels a little too kind of light and airy, mainly because when you look at the other films that come out in 1994, it really feels like it's like a safe corporate pick. I mean, you're up against something like Shawshank Redemption, Pulp Fiction, The Professional, even like harsher kind of comedies like Dumb and Dumber come out. You got The Crow that comes out as well, Speed and True Lies came out. I mean, 94 was a great year for cinema. I mean, of course, everybody's going to love. I think Forrest Gump won that year, didn't they? Over Shawshank Redemption for Best Picture. Lion King, I think, was nominated for Best Picture too that year. But it's a nice little feel good movie. I'm glad you got emotional. Had a few tears or stuff like that. To me, I kind of don't feel one way or another. It feels just like a nice little package retelling of the '60s generation, '50s and '60s. I kind of included to like the white collar version of like Dazed and Confused of the '70s.
There you go.
That kind of vibe and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a good flick. I mean, it's hard to argue with something that everybody's almost seen and loves. Great character moments in it. You talk about Gary Sinise and Robin Wright, Jenny. of course, and Sally
Yes.
Field. The film, the measure of a good film is how often it can be parodied, and this film has been parodied and quoted
Yep.
several 100,000 times.
Yep.
So that's got to say something, whether you like the film or not. If it gets in the public consciousness at that level, it's got to be worthwhile on some level.
Oh yeah, yeah. 94 was a hard year to pick, and our strategy here for the first 10 episodes, we're trying to pick the more popular stuff. So that was definitely kind of a reason why we picked that. But yeah, like you said, there's some awesome movies in '94, and when we come back, it's gonna be hard to pick again.
So we always keep telling ourselves, we'll pick that the next time. We'll pick that the next time. I have a question as far as a movie maker, maybe writer standpoint here for you, Rob. I always feel like, as far as is it harder to possibly write a movie kind of like Forrest Gump, where you're intertwining the fictional stories with the factual events, or is it easier to just make a complete blown up, completely fictional world? Or what's the take there? Because I always feel like it's neat when a movie I think ties in, kind of not a obviously this is not a completely factual movie or real as far as that sense goes, but I always like how they took all those major events and as far if we talk graphics too, I thought it was really cool how the clips look. I mean, even today's look great. Is how here was Tom
like
Hanks
with
standing,
Kennedy and stuff.
But as far as making a movie, is it easier to make one just completely made up, or is it harder to make one tied in events, or what? How's that feel? Maybe some of your expertise there.
Well, with Forrest Gump, it's got to be a lot easier for the screenwriter since it was based on a book.
Right, that's true.
So that was probably pretty easy to do.
Right, I'm sure.
But as far from like just a creation point of view, I think you just have to decide kind of what you want to do. Like if you know that you want to tell the story, like essentially a bunch of short stories with the same kind of character that kind of hits all these points in history, I think that kind of gives your grounding, and that they both have their own unique challenges. It's like, okay, what moments in history from the 50s and 60s do you want to touch on? And then you'll ultimately have a list of like 15 or 20, and what gets left out, So, what only gets talked about? What do you hear in the background? Like when, Martin Luther King gets shot, and they talk about it kind of briefly. They glaze over some of the more important stuff, but they give credence to some of the other stuff. I think anytime that you're trying to do like a fictional world, especially when you start, going towards more of a fantastical side of things, that you've really got to be careful about the rules that you set up. Because you have to adhere to them. Otherwise, it's like, okay, so you said this early on, and now you're saying this, like the latest Star Trek film that came out, where they have Khan using this portable, transporter. Well, how come they couldn't use that anywhere else in the film? They had the technology and they showcased it early on. Oh, there's a huge plot hole. And don't get me started on Man of Steel that came out, because I can show you about 10 or 13 different plot holes in that.
Okay.
But I'm a big fan. Like I like what you're saying, though. I mean, I'm a big fan when I try to write stuff. I try to ground it in reality first, and kind of stem it off into a fictional kind of universe beside that. Like even my sci-fi adventure film Unearthly, I grounded a lot of the stuff in science. I said the zone where these creatures are is basically a magnetic anomaly that exists in the world, based on the lunar patterns, and
okay, that's awesome.
Kind of like a traveling Bermuda Triangle, so to speak. And these anomalies have been well documented and reported. I don't get too deep into it, but there's an actual motivation for that kind of stuff. So not as like deep as the historical references that Forrest Gump makes, of course, but something grounded in reality to kind of anchor the film and what's going on, I think is always preferable.
Well, that's awesome. To go back a little bit on this, the timeline I wrote down. So he was in Vietnam, met Lieutenant Dan. Of course, like Ryan was saying, the big thing there was that he saved his life. Lieutenant Dan didn't want it. So then he goes in the hospital, learns how to play ping pong, which I just thought was hilarious because he just picked it up so fast. And of course, he goes to China and plays in international ping pong tournaments. And from there, he made the promise to do the shrimp boat that him and Bubba agreed to. And one of the things in the movie that I loved, it was just kind of funny, was Forrest was narrating it, and he would say something like, Bubba knows everything there is about the shrimp boat business, and then it would cut to Bubba, I know everything there is to know about the shrimp boat business. And that happened multiple times in the movie, and I couldn't help but laugh every time. It never got old to me. I just loved how, because even the narration was simple and kind of in the Forrest Gump vein. So, but yeah, he did the shrimp and boat thing, and I'll tell you mine, Ryan. But did you have a favorite scene of the whole shrimp boat thing?
A favorite scene of the shrimp boat?
Yeah,
Um,
I thought there were some awesome ones there.
well, of course, I like the one where Lieutenant Dan's strapped to the top, and his the everything is going crazy in the sea, and he's just you can't take me, he's just basically tied onto the mast of this boat, and so that's probably one of my favorite of the shrimp boat.
Yeah, I love it when Lieutenant Dan is at the dock and he's just sitting there, and Forrest decides he's going to
That's right.
instead of docking his boat, and his dive is hilarious because he's like flipping his hands, still waving. Of course, the boat comes through and crushes him on the dock. He's like, "That's my boat." Yeah. So the humor in that was just fantastic. But so yeah, he did the shrimp boat. And I love the part where, he leaves and Lieutenant Dan's still sending me monies, and then he said, and then he bought me some stock in a fruit company.
Yeah.
And then the little sign that says Apple on the paper. And of course, I didn't catch that when I was a kid either.
Yeah.
So that was cool. His mom died, and he moves back into his house, gets a job mowing grass where he doesn't get paid. He's just that good Samaritan. A good veteran that takes care of his town without even question. And then Jenny comes back, she gets pregnant, and then Forrest runs, which I just thought that was a kind of interesting thing. He just felt like running. And so sometimes I think, how did whoever make that up come up with that? We'll just make him run for a few chapters.
Yeah.
But it was still cool, maybe it's just where he got those running shoes. He just felt like running. And I know a lot of it is because he said he needed to think, and something about starting over, something Mama said.
Right. It's just that simplistic form, I think, of I'm just going to run, and we all exercise. A lot of times we exercise when we're stressed or, whatever. Some exercise more than others. I don't exercise a lot. I said that like I do that a lot, so I won't.
Hey,
I'll preface that I don't exercise a lot, but,
And just so you guys know, me and Ryan did run yesterday, so it wasn't like Forrest, but we did run.
Yes.
But, so yeah, that happens, and then, of course, he's narrating it all through the park bench, and he's actually meeting Jenny, and at the end he tells that old lady where he's supposed to be going, and she's like, well, that's just 5 or 6 blocks that way, and he just kind of looks at her and takes off. And that's when he finds out he has a son who is actually what's that little actor's name? Haley Joel Osment. Osment, yeah. So he meets him, and of course Jenny dies, and he takes care of his son, and it just ended on a real cool note at the end. Of course, the whole feather coming into the movie at the beginning and then leaving at the end. But I love the part where little Forrest goes up on the bus and kind of meets I guess it would be the next generation of the bus driver, the original Forrest. Man, that was just a real cool ending. And, even my wife, and she's always a good gauge at this.
Did she cry?
No.
Oh wow!
But she hates.
No, I didn't cry, but you did. Okay.
Yeah. That's bad.
You should have lied, Nick. Right there. You should have lied.
You see who wears the pants.
There
in that
should have been some white lies there.
Yes.
I'm an honest guy. What can I say? But it was a good gauge because she's the type of person who hates a movie if the people don't get together in the end, and I can't stand that. I'm like, it's a good movie regardless. And she actually liked the ending, even though Jenny died. And I really thought, because a lot of the movies I watch that's outside of her little Twilight realm, they don't have the best endings, and she actually liked that, so that was cool. That means it was a good movie, that it caught her eye there too. So, it wasn't that everyone gets together in the end and we all live happily ever after, because that's not life. So, but that's just my short timeline. I kind of wanted to. I always feel like sometimes when we're on this podcast we don't go over the story real well, so I wanted to do a short timeline. Was there anything in there, Ryan, you wanted to?
I don't think so. I mean, that is the movie.
Yeah. Did you have an overall favorite scene?
No, I don't know if I really did. As far as that goes, I'm kind of ADD, I guess, and so I like the short story part of it, like how it just jumps from story to story to story. It keeps my attention a lot better as far as that goes. I want to bring up music. I want to mention music because we always talk music, and I have no idea why this song always stuck out. And every time I've watched it, the song I don't even know if I'll get it right. I think it's Buffalo Springfield's Something Happening Here. Is that the name of it? The Vietnam. I don't know why. Every time I watch the movie, that song always, I take notice when that song plays there during the Vietnam scene. Have no idea why. I don't even really know the song, but I wanted to throw that out there for you, Nick Stevens, because you are the music guy, and I never even notice the music sometimes.
Yeah.
And I throwing it out there.
Yeah. And this movie, speaking of music, firsthand introduced me to CCR. That scene where they're right on the Vietnam, and you hear that little the guitar guitar, and that song is fantastic. And I'm
Favorite
like,
Son, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, who is that band? And of course, we had the soundtrack. My brother's a huge CCR fan. He bought the soundtrack, and I was like, oh, we got like the greatest hits and everything. So that kind of helped my love of CCR. So, but the music was cool. I like hearing all those old tunes. I'm definitely a classic rock kind of guy sometimes, so that helps me out. So. But yeah, that kind of takes care of it. One little funny thing I wanted to throw out there, and this is still hilarious to me, when he's going over some of the guys' names, when they're in that line, when Lieutenant Dan told him to get down and shut up, he's like, Dallas, he was from Phoenix, Cleveland from Detroit, and Tex, I'm not sure where he was from. I mean, it's just how, I wonder if someone, they used to tease Forrest a lot. I wonder if they kind of made him think they were really from these other places, or something he just came up with in his mind, but I just thought that was funny. But, so that kind of wraps up the timeline for Forrest. Do you have any other thoughts, Rob, you want to throw in there about Forrest Gump?
My favorite scene is probably when he's running with the braces on and he just breaks free from them, and you see them just like shatter and he just takes off. It's like the classic thing in all cinema when you see like a character who's like hindered by a weakness and turns it into a strength. Usually that's the kind of thing that you see like near the end of the film where they've been battling this thing until they, think about it in a different light. But it's just such an iconic scene, the way it's like in slow motion, and you want this poor, handicapped kid to just get away from these bullies, and he just like these things just like shred to pieces around his legs, and all of a sudden you realize like that he's got giant calf muscles and he's just like an Olympic athlete, and he just takes off, and it's like yes, stand up, get off the couch moment, you're like
you're clapping. That's awesome.
That's the exciting scene.
And then what's funny is that scene's easily forgotten, I think, just because it happens so early, like you said. Like, when you think back through the course of that whole movie, all this stuff happens, and that was such a big moment in his life in general, that basically kickstarts everything. And, it does happen so early, like you almost kind of forget about it when the end of the movie comes around.
Yeah, totally.
That's awesome. Yeah, so we didn't get very many listener responses for this one. I think people just didn't realize how old the movie was. I got that 2 or 3 times. They're like, that came out in '94. People were kind of shocked about that. So, but yeah, I mean, it's like I said, to me, it's held up well. I have it in my collection, which is, I think I bought it 3 or 4 years ago, and I haven't watched. I do that a lot. I'll buy a movie, sit on my shelf. I don't watch it. I just like to have it sitting there. I'm one of those weird collectors. But
you just knew it was going to make you cry. That's all.
Yeah. That's like, watching, that stinking Passion of the Christ movie. I bought it and never watched it again because I'm not watching that movie again. But I have it. Yeah. But yeah, I'm not watching that one again for a while. But so yeah, I don't really have any. Like I said, listener responses really didn't happen for this one. I think people were just shocked that it was.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty big movie. So.
But it's also one of those kind of films, like I said, it's kind of a light and airy feeling. It's like people generally like it. There's nothing really not to like about it. It's kind of whimsical and quirky, so it's kind of like everybody kind of gets it. So maybe that's the reason too. You didn't get a lot of write-ins. Yeah. It's not like a controversial film like Pulp Fiction where some people really like it. Some people hate the fact that it's all out of order, or I don't know.
Yeah, I understand. Tarantino sometimes kind of throws me the wrong way. So. Yeah, so that kind of wraps up Forrest Gump. I don't have any really final thoughts other than I liked it, and like Rob was saying, it is lighthearted, and I love I just love has a little taste of everything for everybody. You get some sports, you got some people like war movies, not horror, but you got comedy stuff, and just a lot of intense stuff. And it was just neat how it went through the cultures. And Jenny kind of followed the bad version of the cultures. I mean, I don't know. We'll just
she's a bad girl from the wrong side.
Exactly. I'm maybe not her. When she was protesting, that's probably not a bad thing. But when she got into the drugs and everything. And it just kind of showed how they kind of merged together at the end. I thought that was cool. And I'm a sucker for a good love story sometimes. But, all right. So, yeah.
Your tears are evident of that.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not ashamed.
Okay. Real man can admit when he cries.
That's right.
On air.
That's right.
Forever.
Yeah. Yeah, that's scary.
It's documented.
And I should have been like Ryan and hid my last name from the
Exactly.
world.
People don't even know who I am, so we're just going to go that route. And so, of course, Rob was a third party. It was kind of interesting how he said basically here we are, with a retro sort of podcast enjoying this movie that, like he said, chronicled, a retro for that generation of the 50s and 60s. So, basically saying that we're just kind of boring in general, summing up that we're just completely retro all the way around.
No, I'm just saying.
I know what you're saying, but it is true. Like I never really thought of that.
There's a nice parallel there.
As a third party, I was like, oh wow, we're kind of predictable. That's kind of sad. And so,
I meant it as a loving comment.
I understand. I self-analyzed myself for the second there. I thought about I should change this up and be like, I just really didn't like this movie because
because it talks things from the past. That's weird.
That's weird. But that was just a nice third-party comment there about us. How we, it does make sense that we would like that style of movie.
Yeah. Yeah, so Rob, I really enjoyed having you on and talk about these things. You really added a lot. He knows a lot about the real good details, the development work. That was awesome because that's something we try to dive into. But I don't want to be one of those guys that just reads from a Wikipedia page. Sometimes I listen to this podcast and think he's reading that right from Wikipedia. I know he is. So I do go to Wikipedia and learn a little bit, but I try to do most of that from just my childhood memories, and so that was really awesome. Real thankful to have Rob on here. Really appreciate it, man.
Stayed awake the whole time too. So.
Yeah, that was impressive.
Yeah. So. Now I'm gonna try to crawl back in bed and get a few more hours of sleep, and then start the day. And I have a feeling my dog won't let me go to bed because it's almost time for his WALK, and I can't say it otherwise he'll get excited.
That's awesome. I was like, why is he spelling that? That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, all right. We're just ending the show with some shout-outs. Want to give a big thanks to the Retro Junkies, as always, Rob and Landon. You can check them out at facebook.com/retrogamingjunkies. Another big shout-out to Factory Sealed. They finally released a new episode. They've been on a hiatus. A couple of their guys went to E3. They're also a retro podcast. It's facebook.com/Factory Sealed. Those guys probably don't know it, but with just as much as they let me interact with them and emails, they kind of encouraged me to do a podcast without actually telling me to do a podcast.
That's who I got to thank for this.
Yeah, exactly. In which one of the guys, he's been listening a lot to us. Aaron, he may actually come on one of our shows. I was real honored by that because I'm a fan of you guys. Now that's going to happen. So, and now a new podcast that Rob, Luther, and I from Retro Junkies are going to start. We're actually going to record this week. It's called the Genesis Gems. And I don't know what in the world happened, but that Facebook page blew up. I think it's because we put Sonic as our profile pic. But like our Facebook page, Ryan, it's close to 200 likes, and this one's already got like 650. And we haven't even done.
So you're saying I'm weighing you down? Is that
you are?
That's what I'm feeling. Okay.
Yeah, I've been cheating on you in the podcast world, like you said. So, but that's crazy. So I'll probably go on there and be like, make sure you check out the NES podcast. Trying to get some listeners from a podcast that doesn't even exist yet. But anyways, go check that out. It's facebook.com/Genesis Gems podcast, and of course check out our friend Rob here at facebook.com/the NES Club. Now you have a real good insight of what he's doing, what he's trying to do, what he's trying to accomplish with this documentary, and we're excited to see it. We were, like I said, very honored to have you on here, Rob. We really thank you for that, taking time, especially 4 a.m. That's awesome. This is a guy that's going to be affiliated with Nintendo, and he jumps on here at 4 a.m., so that I'm completely honored. And if you see Reggie, say, the NES podcast says hi. Or maybe not, because we could get in trouble for ripping off NES. No,
all good. All good. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be chatting with you guys, even at this early in the morning. It was a lot of fun. I'm glad I could help with the other segments too.
I appreciate it, man. It really added a lot. So with that, we went over a little bit of an hour, which is kind of what we try to keep it at. So we want to encourage all you listeners to give us feedback. Tell us what you liked, what you didn't like. We really want to. We didn't have an email of the show. I did get a few emails, but they're kind of late. So we're going to postpone the email of the show next time. The guy who won last time actually sent a real nice one too, and we need to get him his prize from last time first before we even consider him for the second one. Which Chris Owens did win last time. He won a copy of Jurassic Park, and he actually asked Ryan and I to sign it, which I thought was hilarious. So I told him we would if he wanted us to, because I didn't want to ruin his cart with a couple bad signatures. But he said he wanted to sign, so he does win that. I'm gonna get you to sign that sometime this weekend, Ryan, so we can finally ship it out to this guy. So. Email us at NES. It's nespodcast@gmail.com. We're going to be doing this contest in the future. Just send us a review of what we're talking about or what we've already talked about, what your thoughts were, and we're just going to pick the one we like the best. If it turns out to be a lot of them, we might start picking out of the hat, just not to offend everybody, but just something that brings up good discussion and something we really like. So, and you can win just like Chris Owens did. And check us out on Facebook. We're facebook.com/NES podcast. We, throughout the week, we'll talk about what we're going to be discussing in our next podcast. And Ryan's actually going to pick 95 this time.
All right.
Yeah, he was kind of perplexed by where he didn't play Earthworm Jim. He's like, that's going to be hard on me. So
Right.
we're just
Gotta
going to
find something good.
Yeah, oh, it's good. You know Earthworm Jim is good. But we're going to let Ryan do that. And so with that, we're going to close it out. Anything else you want to say, Rob, before we close out?
No, it's just really cool that you guys do contests and sign cards. So maybe when the NES is done, we can get some merch to you guys to get your listeners kind of connected to the NES Club train, whether it's a DVD or a Blu-ray or a signed NES cart with one of our posters as the sticker on it, signed by Jay and I or something. But again, just a real pleasure to be part of this scene. Real fun.
Yeah, thanks, man. That'd be great.
Yeah.
So, all right, you got anything to close with, Ryan?
I'm good.
All right, with that, we're out.